LA and the Rays square off in the friendly, or maybe not so friendly, Andrew Friedman feud. That plus an even louder sports betting boom. Hello and welcome to Double AI. This is the podcast on analytics and sports. I'm Phil in Los Angeles. Joining me are Andrew Engel, a chief data scientist from Rasco in San Diego. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Phil. Hello, Ari.
And Ari joins us, Ari Kaplan, global AI evangelist for Data Robot. He's in Chicago. Howdy, Ari.
Hey, Phil. Hey, Andrew. And hello, listeners.
Yeah. So Dodgers and Rays, World Series Game 1 later on today as we record this. Dodgers the favorite, of course. Rare, the best two teams in baseball, teams with the best two records. Andrew Friedman and his current team, the Dodgers, and his old team, the Rays, getting together. Lessons to learn here from our industry. We've talked about this before. Every year is a learning cycle or a trend. And what lessons can we learn from big market, the way Andrew managed that, and small market, the Rays and their approach? So, Ari, what is his philosophy?
Well, yeah, Phil, I had the privilege of consulting with Andrew and the Rays back in the day. I know he's evolved and grown as has the game, but it's very data driven overall. Look at information. That information could be sensor based, it could be scout based, but really understand all aspects of baseball and business operations. And he's been very successful both in Tampa when you have almost very very little budget for players, and then going over to the Dodgers where you have a large amount of funds so you can balance all of that. But that's basically overall philosophy, is use information to help guide which players you should get and what are your strengths and weaknesses and habits and how can you get better.
And Andrew, we've seen evidence of his competency in analytics in that executives of all four of the final four teams have a relationship, have worked for him.
Yeah. And when you said Andrew, there's the other Andrew. Two Andrews.
all of the above. But so guys, think of that. That is really rare to have a philosophy that spreads that quickly and that successfully. Everybody in baseball tries to take some things and steal and make it their own. That's part of the culture. I did that as a college coach. Who wouldn't do that when you learn something good? But Andrew, let's take a look at how they built 40-man roster or roster construction, player acquisition philosophy.
Yeah.
With the Dodgers, a little bit different from how he did it with the Rays and how the Rays are currently doing it.
Yeah, I think going back to what Ari said and speaking about the four finalists in the last series, or semifinalists in the last series, right, these are analytics-driven organizations. The Dodgers have the largest analytics group. I think they're tied for first, and I think the Rays were tied for third for the largest staff doing this. So they're both doing it, but they're very different teams in very different markets with very different budgets, right? And you see that the Dodgers have personnel, right? They've got lots of people. They focus on growing their own players, really focusing on the draft. Outside of the most notable outlier of Mookie Betts, it's a home-built team, right? 16 of their players were drafted. Whereas if you think about the Rays, and we were talking about the Rays just last week because of the way they would take advantage of taking players, maybe trading down, getting more bets. So they're really focused on that minor league scouting, using the analytics, acquiring the players. And in their case, 20 of their players were acquired through draft or through trades. They're taking advantage of the skills they have. They're taking advantage of the analytics, but working within whatever constraints ownership is putting on them.
Yeah, pretty remarkable that half the 40-man, 20 Rays players acquired by trades. That's impressive and a lot to think about because they've always traded often, but this is the peak of their winning arc. Speaking the language of it, over the last 6 years since Kevin Cash got there as manager, the first 3 years, those trades were all bubbling up, so to speak. And then the pieces started to fall together a season ago when they played really well at the end of the season. That was still a 90-win season. And then if we take that onto the field, Ari, some of the team strengths, both teams, very similar.
Yeah, absolutely. Depth for each of them. With the Dodgers, I was looking. Darren Williams has this dashboard of like more advanced metrics of, offense, for example, putting barrel on bat, and up and down the lineup. The Dodgers have very, very good depth. The number 8 and 9 hitter, very dangerous. Anyone can hurt you. There are relief pitchers. The Kershaw up and down is another discussion. But the Rays are playing very well like a team. It's like one organism that moves, gets on base and moves base runners around, and they have some outstanding pitching. And that's the thing that really impressed me of the World Series and then the playoffs, was just how improved and changed pitching is. To have a pitcher throw 98, 99, 100, 101 as a starter, and then can complement that with an 89 slider. You have those two in your repertoire, and you could be an all-star, and then you add in a changeup and a knuckle curve and command. It's unbelievable. The quality of pitching. Even with the Marlins Sixto, earlier on the playoffs. So pitching is something that's evolving and ever getting better.
Well, guys, I have a question for you. We're talking about modern terms, pitching and run prevention. And the Dodgers and Rays certainly have plenty of that. The starting pitching, Kershaw, Buehler, Dustin May, Julio Urias, Tony Gonsolin, Tampa, Blake Snell, Charlie Morton, Tyler Glasnow. Bullpen full of Diego Castillo, who's been very impressive in the playoffs, Nick Anderson and Pete Fairbanks. Got to give them credit. The Rays, fewer walks than all but 2 teams in the league. Both top 5 teams on defensive runs saved. Dodgers are second overall. Both utilize shifting lots. So is pitching and run prevention the same as pitching and defense? Or how more can we go deeply into the shifting and see what a difference that makes?
Yeah, it's like that organism example. It's not just a pitcher in isolation. It's a pitcher, the defense, as you see with Mookie Betts, robbing a couple extra base hits away. But a pitcher, once a ball's in play, it's up to the defense to convert it. So if you're one pitcher and your defense is great, versus if your defense is terrible, that affects you. And that's one of the things when I was in the front office that I would look at is, the skills of the pitcher. If they were to come to my team and have my defense, like a Manny Machado at third, et cetera, how would that affect the results? So in other words, don't just look at what happened where they were. Could be a different stadium with different dimensions. So defense has a huge effect on, how a pitcher performs. You convert one more out, one more run, that changes the options that the pitcher has. You're pitching from a different, leverage situation. You have different options. Let the ball get in play and let your infield convert double plays, for example.
Andrew, give us an example of how analytics staffs break down an important factor like shifts. I mean, the Dodgers shift more than any team in baseball to get their guys in the right place. And we saw tremendous individual and team defense by both of these clubs in the league championship series. The Dodgers shift 56% of the time. What does it mean analytically to break that down? How do you get to that point?
Yeah, the first thing is I just want to talk about the shifting real briefly because, right, the Rays are the ones who brought shifting to the modern consciousness, started doing it many years ago, and they've actually fallen off in comparison to league average. They're slightly below league average at this point, but the Dodgers are now shifting more than everyone else. It's an interesting combination. But no, this really is the outcome of analytics, because it was one thing to say, I know roughly where the person was going to hit it, but an analytics staff taking advantage of the ball tracking and fielder tracking information can now begin modeling, if I throw this pitch in this location to this batter, I know the ball is likely to do these things. If it's hit on the ground, it's likely to hit here. If it's hit in the air, it's likely to be hit here. And knowing that information, I can tell my players where they should stand for every single pitch, for every single batter. So it's no longer just, oh, I'm going to call this pitch as the catcher. We're thinking about everything. And you see this, you now see outfielders reach into their back pocket before every at bat. They're reading information from the analytics staff as to where they should be standing for every batter, knowing how the team is going to pitch them. Like, this is a huge difference. I remember growing up in Minneapolis, going to Metropolitan Stadium, and some of those outfielders never moved, and they never moved so bad that you could see where they stood because the grass was dying, right? And now everyone's moving constantly.
That is excellent old school stuff. Well done, Andrew. Well, all right, question. I'm digging through, reading, doing homework, preparing for this and the start of the World Series, and I noticed one glaring thing. Tampa's bullpen's been brilliant, but they're shy on a lefty bullpen arm. And teams in the National League West learn very quickly against the Dodgers that you need left-handed arms to deal with Corey Seager, Bellinger, Muncy, Peterson. Is that an advantage? Could that be the decisive advantage for the Dodgers in this World Series?
Great question. And that was actually one question I got from a GM, since they did not have lefty relievers, and they asked me, how important is it to have? And so I did actual, research to back this answer up. But yeah, it is very important to have a diversity of starters and relievers. Lefty righty is one. It's not just a number. It's where you release, like, from the outside going inward into the batter, for example, that some batters, it really is a weakness of theirs. So for many, many batters, you really need lefty relievers. In the same vein, if you have pitchers with different pitch types or pitch velocities, you basically want a variety of an arsenal to be able to address the weaknesses of your opponent. You pull in a reliever to face those weaknesses.
That's excellent. We'll come back to that later. TV ratings. Fellas, we got to tip our caps to Major League Baseball. Game 7, Dodgers and Braves. Game 7, 9.6 million viewers. That's a big audience. That's nearly double the best audience this season for baseball. Better than maybe about 2 million viewers. That's substantial. In fact, it was better this past weekend than college football, Bama and the University of Georgia. It was higher than any of the NBA playoff games. We got to tip our cap to Major League Baseball. It'll be interesting to see how a small market Florida team and the Dodgers, but keep in mind, Atlanta and the Dodgers, we are not saying ESPN's 30 favorite teams in Major League Baseball, which are, go ahead, the Yankees and the Red Sox.
Yeah.
And the Red Sox and the Yankees.
Right.
And occasionally in the Mets and the Cubs, but back to the Yankees and the Red Sox. Those are ESPN's favorite 30 teams in the big leagues. So we give them credit for that. All right, on to gaming. And Andrew, we have some catching up to do here. We talk about sports betting boom. It's not quitting, it's getting bigger. Can you lead us through this information?
Yeah, this is insane. And it's a repeat in some ways of the story we did about a month ago. About a month ago, we were talking about New Jersey sports handle, and it was 668 million in August, which blew away their previous record. And that was before football. And we figured September would be good with football coming. And it was. They exceeded their August record. It was now almost 750 million bet on sports gambling in New Jersey in September. And these are blowing away the prior record for sports betting, which was 614 million set in Vegas back in November of last year. so far, New Jersey's sports betting is doing really well with 3.3 billion taken in already this year. Um, this is more money than New Jersey or Atlantic City makes in their casino gaming every year. So it's been huge for those sports books.
Well, and we're about to get to one thing I'll point out in a minute, but now let's talk about Cap One Arena in where the Wizards and the Caps play. They're experimenting. I think this is one of those things where early on, Andrew, you just said to me, Phil, you need to keep an eye on this because this has potential to be landscape changing, and that certainly is the case. If you're a professional team of any kind, doesn't matter, WNBA, lacrosse, soccer, men's, women's, you better, and you have a stadium or a venue, you better pay attention to what you're about to explain right now.
Yeah, we've talked about in-person betting at sporting events before. We've talked about how it was coming. We talked about some of the things that were going on. We talked about how big it was in Europe for European football. But I mean, this one actually blows me away. We know they were setting up a sports book and we're going to allow people to bet at Capital One Arena. But in September, they allowed people to bet in a temporary sports book there without anything happening at the event. And they received over 100,000 bets and over $12 million bet, according to William Hill, who's running the sports book. I mean, this is what's going on with no sports in the arena. Can you imagine what it's going to look like when we can finally return and have the fans there?
Well, let's be clear. Will Hill at Cap One is the first retail sports book located in a major sports venue in the United States. And what they did in August is amazing. Tell us about some of the lines, because I want to make fun of this a little bit.
Well, yeah, this boggles the mind. And I don't know what the rules are in DC. I'm going to have to go look up what the sports betting rules are in DC. But the lines were just insane. People waiting 30 minutes or longer even to place their bets. And then they were saying the Thursday night game featuring the Broncos at the Jets, which, I mean, that's not even a really good football game. We'll talk about the Jets later. But at 1 p.m. on a Thursday going into that game, the line stretched out the door and down the block to place a bet on these games. You know, Phil, we live in Southern California. Vegas is not a very far away. I always walk past the sports books in all the casinos I go in just to see what's going on. Great to see what's actually just being displayed and seeing what the lines are for that day. I've never seen lines like this. This is just nuts.
Well, the fact that it was for a Jets game of any merit, that's amazing. Now, and then we want to point out that's really just the beginning. William Hill is still getting approval for construction of a two-story sports book inside that same arena that should be ready sometime in 2021. It'll have 12 betting windows, 10 self-service kiosks, and about 1,500 square feet of LED video wraps and ribbons around the facility with one monster jumbotron. That is a sports betting boom that just keeps getting louder. Really amazing. All right, let's. We made fun of the NFL a little bit. You know, the Jets have not won a game. You know what's odd, guys? The media in New York has hardly noticed.
Mm-hmm. Too busy in the playoffs.
In their own lovable, cuddly way, they just hardly noticed that the Jets have not won a game, or that the Eagles have only won one, or that the Giants have only won one. Yeah, that has been embraced. But there are three teams, and this is good as we both look back and look ahead. Three teams undefeated. Seahawks had a bye. Steelers and Titans, both undefeated through 5 weeks for the second time in franchise history. For Pittsburgh, you have to go way back to 1978. These two teams get together this weekend on Sunday, so one of them will be knocked out of it. 1978. That is the last time and the only previous time that the Pittsburgh Steelers were 5-0. I think Tony Dungy was in the defensive backfield. I saw that on Twitter. Ari, where were you in the fall of 1978?
I was 8 years old, so Lawrenceville, New Jersey. Interestingly, the guy that became one of the Giants' quarterbacks during 85, 86, Scott Bruner, went to high school with me back in 78. Well, I was in elementary school, but from kindergarten up through high school. So that's where I was. And I'm just thinking that's remarkable to read since Steelers have such a storied franchise.
Yeah. Andrew, fall of 78. Twin Cities?
Yeah, I was in Roseville. I was all of 4. So yeah, not very many memories at that point.
Fall of 1978, sophomore year, Muncie, Indiana, Ball State University. Go Cards. Oh, I always have to throw Ball State in there. Okay, let's see. A quick question for you about the 3 undefeated teams. So 3 undefeated starting quarterbacks, Big Ben, Russell, and Tannehill. One attended 2 colleges. Name them in succession. Andrew, you should be able to nail this.
I can. It was Russell Wilson, and he was one of the first fifth-year senior transfers, I think. Went from ACC, but he played his final year at Wisconsin.
North Carolina State. He was a Wolfpack guy. And he did, but you captured that. You're right. Ari, did you know that off the top of your head?
No, I'm
All right.
more baseball than football, but
All right.
Hey, it's Big Ten.
yeah.
Right. And Big Ten football is back. Illinois at Wisconsin kicking it off on a Friday night game. Ari, you're there in the heart of it all in Chicago. As you get a feel for this week that Big Ten football is back, what's your dominant thought about what has unfolded to get to this point?
It always draws back to COVID, and my brain just keeps drawing of how 2 different paths in the world. In baseball, they have 10,000 plus going into the stadium, which they haven't had. In football, you've had earlier on COVID canceling or postponing games. So that's really, I would say the 2 things on my mind are COVID and how that affects players and fans, and then the TV ratings. Those are my 2 things. The World Series, I think, is going to get a lot of attention, and then when that's over in about a week, it'll bounce back. Big Ten, college, NFL, basketball's over. So I think we'll see where it used to be spread out. Everyone was starved and there was like 20 things going on. It's going to kind of be a little bit more normal now.
Yeah. But, Andrew, if we look back at last weekend, there's something that really stood out about the Bama-Georgia game.
Yeah, I mean, we took a little bit of a shot when we pointed out that the NLCS had better ratings than the Bama game. They still did very well for themselves. DraftKings reports that more money was bet on that game than any other college football game so far this season. And the Superbooks, sports betting's bookmaker, reports that 5 times more money was bet on this game than on either of the Saturday ALCS or NLCS games. So there's still a huge amount of money flowing into football.
Yeah.
And then there's something else. We have to give Alabama credit for this. They were favored going into this game and they won. Yeah. But this was the 71st straight game that Alabama has been favored to win. Just an amazing run for that team.
As a former coach, I have a real appreciation for that level of excellence and what Coach Saban has been able to accomplish. Really remarkable. All right, guys, we're down to our final thing, and that's the one thing about the NFL that we each get a chance to talk about. Ari, you are up first. What is your one thing about the NFL?
I don't know. It's kind of silly of me to keep bringing up the Bears, but I have to keep watching and in a way laughing that keep finding ways to win. See how long that can go.
Oh, the Bears in that top 3 defense, winning ugly, but winning nonetheless, right? One loss so far. Andrew, one thing.
Yeah, going back to the Jets, we talked about how the Jets are 0-6 and looking rather futile at this way, right? Lots of people thinking they might go 0-16, but it's not just that they've lost. In all 6 games, they've failed to cover the spread. It's not only that, but they're failing to cover it by over 10 points a game on average. It's just astonishing right now.
Well, that's remarkable. And we were facetious about this early. Clearly, the New York media is paying attention to this season of extreme futility by the Jets. They want everybody fired. Cheerleaders, everybody. They're all fired or traded.
They're not doing their
Right. And my last one thing is, guys, from my days being a reporter on ESPN's NFL Game Day, I always look at what's the one thing or the one person that's standing out that's the opposite, that's not getting much attention at all. Tampa Bay running back Ronald Jones now has 3 straight 100-yard games. He had a pair of touchdowns, 113 yards last weekend. And this weekend, Tampa is at Las Vegas playing the Raiders on NBC's Sunday night game. While everybody's focusing on Tom Brady, Ronald Jones is off to a tremendous start. We'll give both Brady and Ronald Jones credit for that. He's an accomplished running back. I saw him play at USC out here quite a bit. He has real talent. He's legitimate, but anytime you start doing that, they'll be getting some attention. All right. Last thought, how Dodgers or Rays in how many games? Ari, you go first.
Well, hard to make predictions, but I think the Dodgers have the advantage, and I'll say in 6 games.
Andrew?
My head says Dodgers in 5 or 6, but I want Tampa Bay to win. I always have to root for the underdog.
So you're going Dodgers in 5, Ari, Dodgers in 6. Dodgers in 7. Dodgers in 7. We're going the distance because of the ups and downs of the pitching depth and the matchups. Should be fun, though. The ALCS and NLCS were really wonderful to watch. Phenomenal plays on defense, game-changing plays on defense, and then what Randy Arozarena did with the bat, and the same thing with Corey Seager, what he did with the bat. Both those guys are not big, high-profile star, attention-getting, Twitter lighting up type guys, but man, they dominated those 2 series and sure was fun to watch. Well, that'll do it for us. This is Double AI, the podcast on analytics for Andrew and Ari. Guys, you want to say goodbye?
Yep. Bye, everyone.
Yep, we'll see you next week here on Double AI.